Today, we have a special guest, Jamie McKinney. You may know her if you've worked in the business for a while. She's an author, a motivational speaker. She's a leadership coach. I mean, what doesn't she do? But if you have women, if you have ladies, younger, older, whatever, that work in your body shop or work in the collision industry, because she actually came from a paint company, have them listen to this. This is so good for all of us in the industry that are female and also those that are male, because we're talking about different interaction styles. We're talking about the gifts of being different and how to potentially get your voice heard. I know there's a lot of males in the industry that don't feel like they can get their voice heard or get their message across or even feel like they're really part of something. So she gives us all some great takeaways today. I really enjoyed my talk with her, and I think you are going to too. You are, yes, I can speak the English. I think you're going to love it too. So stay tuned.
Welcome to Body Bangin', your podcast for all things body. Auto body, that is. And now, introducing Body Bangin's host, Mickey Woods of Mickey Woods Marketing. Mickey is a former auto collision center owner and is now a marketing and business development expert to shops across the globe.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Body Bangin' podcast. On today's episode, we're going to do a little bit something different. We're having a female on the podcast. Yay! Besides me, of course. So welcome. This is Jamie Dandar McKinney. Some of you may know her. She worked at PPG for 10 years. Hi, Jamie.
Yeah. Hello, Mickey. So glad to be here with you.
Yes, I'm super excited. Jamie is a boss. She's an author. She's a motivational speaker. She's a leadership coach. She worked at PPG for a long time, like I said, but now you're the president of your own company, which is so exciting. JMD Consulting. Congratulations.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
So awesome. So I wanted to have Jamie on today for a few different reasons, but I think it's important, number one, that we talk about women. If you're a woman in this industry, some of the things that I think would be great for you to hear from a fellow woman in the industry or women, including myself, but then also for all of the men listening. We know that there are just differences between males and females. And so Jamie, I'm going to kind of kick it over to you and let you kind of get started, because I don't think this is just because it's two women talking that this doesn't necessarily mean that the men should tune it out. I think this is a great opportunity also for men to be like, oh, I never really thought about it that way, kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Just heard somebody say, with an open hand and an open mind, it will always be full. And so this is an opportunity to, I think, listen with an open mind, because, as you said, Mickey, I think it comes as no surprise to anyone that men and women see things differently and we think about things differently. And when we focus on the opportunity of that, as opposed to the challenge or the discomfort in it, there's advantages, a lot of advantages for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge opportunity there. And one thing, Jamie and I had spoken prior to this, and one thing you and I, Jamie, talked about is when you were at PPG, and I think this will resonate with a lot of the women on the call, and for men as well. But one thing, being a woman experiencing coming into a male-dominated industry, you said something really interesting about realizing you didn't have to actually be the smartest person in the room. Although you felt like you probably had to be trying to prove yourself to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I started working for PPG, that was my first job out of college. And I distinctly remember in the interview, they asked me, what do you know about cars and paint? And I said, my dad showed me how to change the oil in the garage. Like, that's about the extent of what I know.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, darn it, I think I just, talked myself out of this job, disqualified myself. But actually, they said, great. We love that you don't know anything. That means that you come with no bad habits, essentially no habits, but no bad habits. And we can teach you the PPG way. And I was like, well, game on, gentlemen, because that sounded like a ton of fun to me to, be welcomed into a company and learn about something that I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
But one of the realizations when I got there is, I don't know if I think part of me probably assumed there were others starting from scratch like I was and learning. But really surrounding me, it was completely the opposite. I mean, there were men who had been in the industry for literally longer than I had been alive,
Right.
and knew a lot. And at first, that felt like a huge disadvantage to me at meetings. And I just thought, how am I ever going to compete? How am I going to speak up? How am I going to do any of it? But, I would often sit there and I would have ideas or I would have things to say. And yet sometimes they would stay trapped in my head. Or, I might say something and then I would get talked over. And that was really frustrating to me. And I was not okay with it. And so one of the things I started to do was lean into what were the unique perspectives or what were the strengths or what was the share that I could offer that was different from the group. And in some cases, I would get looked at like I had two heads. But in other cases, when someone was secure in their own skills and their own abilities and saw me as a team member, not a threat or, oh my gosh, she could be my boss someday. Like here come the shenanigans, right?
Right.
When someone actually took the time to look at that and get curious and say, no, wait a minute. What was that you said? Because, we've been doing it this way for a long time. But in some cases, your naivety or your fresh perspective could open us up to ideas or possibilities that we haven't thought of. I mean, you do have life experience, right? that we don't have.
Right.
And when we can, pun intended, pump the brakes here to welcome in these new ideas, there could be something worth exploring here.
Right. Well, and the perspective for all people, really, we all have a different perspective and lens we look at things through.
Right.
And then you talk about, men and women and just how naturally, not that all men are the same or all women are the same, but, typically we do process differently. And, I think I also felt the same way coming into situations and just being a big question. Maybe that's why I'm a good podcast host, because I ask a lot of questions and I always have. But it was a lot of like, well, why do you do that? Well, why do we do that? Well, because that's the way we've always done it. Okay, but why? And just shifting that thinking because people had just done things for so long. And it sounds like you experienced a lot of that too, of asking questions and giving feedback from and beautiful that you really didn't know what everybody else knew, because that's really where growth happens.
100%. And yeah, I mean, Mickey, your curiosity and questions are definitely two of your superpowers. And that's also a sign of growth mindset, not fixed mindset. And growth mindset is where we experience innovation, where you come up with different ideas, where, I was a part of a Greenbelt certification and a lean operating program with the collision centers. And the collision center owner had to have some growth mindset to welcome us in to say, yes, we're really going to, blow up things as we know them, do it differently. I mean, essentially what we were doing, it's fun to visualize this again, was turning the shop into what to me looked like a huge board game. Everything was color coded. There were paths. There were, the shadow board was taken to the whole next level. And it was phenomenal to see the results, like how cycle time would go down. Well, that required curiosity, right? That required stepping out of comfort zone. That required growth mindset. And there were huge benefits on the other side.
Right. Now, one thing you had talked about was one thing that you felt like had helped you was having confidence. And I feel like that served me really well also. Can you speak on that for a moment?
Oh yeah, this is it's my favorite subject, Vicky. Yeah, and I mean that was my secret sauce. I mean that was my superpower at the time, because, like you said, I mean it was going to be a long time before I was the smartest or the most experienced person in the room. Right. Now, granted, I had to know my stuff, and I studied, and I made flashcards, and I did a lot of things that I probably never shared with anybody else when I was there.
That's awesome.
but I knew I needed to know my stuff and I needed to know it 2-3 times as well. And, for women, sometimes women will see that as a disadvantage or that's not fair. And I view it differently that, that knowledge, I got to take that with me. Nobody could take that away from me. And yeah, maybe I did need to know it 3 times as well, but that knowing it 3 times as well had a multiplicative effect as I went throughout my career.
Right.
And one of the things I would do prior to going into meetings was I made my strategy. I had a preparation routine that I went through. So I thought about, okay, what's on the agenda? If there wasn't an agenda, I contacted the person running the meeting and said, what can I expect? What can I do to prepare? And so I came to the meeting with some key points thought about in advance. I came to the meeting with a couple questions prepared. I came thinking about what might they ask me.
Yeah.
And having responses prepared, and then also having the response prepared when I didn't know, because I didn't want to just say, well, I don't know.
Right.
And I would say something instead, like, that's a really good question. Let me look into it and I'll get back to you. Or I don't have that answer at the moment, but I'll find out and I'll respond. And that actually, when I was out, not maybe as much in the meetings with my colleagues, but when I was out in my territory, which was the northeast corner of Colorado and Wyoming and Nebraska, and I had replaced a gentleman who I think he was in his early 60s at the time. He had been there forever. So when I showed up, I was about as opposite from him as
Yeah.
and I was asked more than once, "Are you Bob's granddaughter?"
Oh, wow.
I was like, "No, I'm Mike Dandar's granddaughter. He's in Ohio. You haven't met him."
Right.
But thumbs up for Bob. He's a good guy. I met him. I think we had coffee at a Village Inn, and he was like, "Here's what I know, Jamie. Go for it."
Nice.
Like, okay.
Nice.
But when I showed up, they would understandably ask me questions that I had a hunch they knew the answers to in some cases, and in some cases they didn't, and they were testing me. And you know what? I was there to provide a service for them. So I don't blame them for testing me. They wanted to know if I had knowledge or if I knew how to find the knowledge. Right. And I remember there was one shop, it might have been in North Platte, Nebraska, but we're tapping into some cobwebs here. So close to North Platte, Nebraska, where the gentleman had asked me a question. I didn't know the answer. And I said, let me take a note. I will go find out and I will be back to you. And I did. A few days went by and I did. I called him and I said, maybe I think his name was Sam. And I said, hey, Sam, I've got that answer to that question for you. And I said it over the phone and then there was silence. And I was like, I remember looking at my phone, like, did I lose the connection? Right. And he said, Jamie, welcome to Colorado, because that's where I was living. He said, welcome to Colorado. And I said, what? And he said, I greatly appreciate that you got back to me. He's like, you know how many people say they're going to do something like that and they never do? And I didn't know that. I mean, this was my, again, first job out of college. My first foray into the business world. And when he said that, Mickey, I was so glad that situation happened because it showed me you don't have to know all the answers, Jamie, but the initiative and the follow-up. Right. That is something you can do that others are not doing. Like that's where you can stand out. That's where you can build credibility and trust. And again, that was something that I still carry to this day throughout my whole career. Right. The ability to follow up could be a superpower in and of itself, no matter what gender you are, right?
Right, exactly. Well, and I think a lot of the things that you're talking about can be applied to really anybody. Now, maybe as females in this industry, we have a little bit of a different struggle than, our male counterparts. But I think all of the things that you're talking about with communication, with thinking outside of the box, not being afraid to express ideas or ask questions, the follow through, the follow up, and being dependable really is what he appreciated, that you were a woman of your word, a person of your word. Huge. There's such huge value in that, just on a human level, really.
Yes, 100%. And back to your question too, Mickey, about the building the confidence is whether it was a meeting with colleagues, whether it was with customers, confidence gets rattled in three primary circumstances. This is universal for all of us.
Okay.
It gets rattled in unfamiliar circumstances. It gets rattled when the stakes are high, and it gets rattled during periods of transition, which can be personal or professional.
Okay.
So in my case, or in anyone's case, you can familiarize the unfamiliar by doing some of those things that I did. I looked at what is the agenda, or I asked for the agenda. I prepared some points in advance. Something else you could do is connect with others who are going to be in that meeting and ask them, hey, what are your expectations for this meeting? Or what do you think the outcome will be? Because that act of having that conversation is familiarizing you with material. It's also familiarizing you with someone else who is going to be in there. It increases the likelihood that you or they say something and the other one goes, exactly, like that's a great point. So you can be very strategic about familiarizing. And as you're doing that, I dare you to not notice your confidence growing.
Right.
Feeling more comfortable and confident going into it. That's one side of it. And then the other side is the stakes. High stakes situations are notorious for rattling even the most confident of us.
Yes.
But as you're going through that familiarization, it's not so much that you can reduce the stakes, but it's impacting how you show up. The energy you're bringing, the posture you're bringing, the eye contact you're bringing. And this is, anytime we're talking about genders, it's never all men or all women.
Right,
so I'm very cognizant of that. And I know you are too. Generally speaking, men are more visual. And so when you're coming in with that confident posture, and I'm a tall 5'2". So my posture is very key to you. Like, you're going to lose me in a crowd of people.
Right.
So my posture is incredibly important for like letting it be known that I'm even there, let alone that I belong there.
Right.
That I have a seat at the table. And so those are, so we're building on this, right? But you can, again, not reduce the stakes so much, but how you show up and the energy that you put out, you're influencing your outcome because people are going to respond to your energy.
Yes.
And to really exemplify that, think about the opposite. If you walk into a room and you're just looking down and you don't have good posture and you're not saying hi to people, or, you shake a hand with a wimpy hand, oh my gosh, you're counting yourself out before the clock even starts ticking.
Yeah.
Right. So those are things that introvert, extrovert, ambivert, no matter where you are, you can make a conscious decision to stand up, to make eye contact, to put your hand out, to introduce yourself, to use a confident voice when you're introducing yourself, and to demonstrate, when you say, hi, I'm Mickey Woods, that's much different than, hi, I'm Mickey Woods. Right. You're setting yourself up for more success when you're demonstrating that you believe in you, because you have to believe in you before they will believe in you. So those were some of the things when I knew I was going into a room with someone who's like, I got, a daughter your age or a granddaughter your age. And I'm like, yeah, man, I know I don't have the same amount of experience that you do. However, I have studied, I have done my homework.
Yes.
And I am going to contribute and participate in this conversation. And for the people who were in the conversation that recognized that value and saw it as a compliment, not as a threat, it was a great conversation. It was a high gain conversation. And I distinctly remember the day that I overheard somebody saying, hey, invite Jamie into this meeting. We want to hear what she thinks. And that that gives me goosebumps even now, because that was such fulfilling affirmation.
Totally.
That I'm at, that they saw me as an asset.
Absolutely. One thing you said that I thought was interesting is the confidence thing being rattled with things that are unfamiliar. Do you think that's why, and this is totally out of left field, but do you think that's why when we talk about doing visualizations, future visualizations of what you want, why that's partially why it's so powerful, because you feel like you've been there before?
Yes. I absolutely think that from research, in order to be it, you have to see it. And being it can literally be like doing a dress rehearsal. If you're giving a presentation, going to the room in advance, setting up your slides, walking around, shadow man sitting in that chair, like going through the motions is familiarizing it. If you don't have that opportunity, visualizing it is your next best option.
Yes. Well, and I know how powerful that's been in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really connect it with the confidence, with the actual confidence piece of it. So that's really interesting how it all kind of works together. It's so cool.
It definitely does. And it's not just woo-woo.
Yeah, right.
We could sit here and talk about chakras and auras. And, and I like some of that. Like, don't get me wrong. But what I like more is the neuroscience and the data behind it. And each of our brains is neuroplastic. It has the ability, it's neuroplasticity is the term. You can look it up. And it's our ability to shape our neural pathways based on our thoughts. For example, if you're starting your day saying, it's going to be such a hard day, I'm dealing with all these difficult people, I just want it to be over, your brain is eavesdropping on what your thoughts are saying. And that's the energy that you're putting out. Whereas, the people, the circumstances, they're all going to be what they're going to be.
Right.
But instead you're saying to yourself, all right, I'm going to choose to do my best today. I'm going to show up as my best self. I'm going to have good conversations. I'm going to contribute. Again, you can't control what happens on the other side, but I guarantee the energy you're bringing to it, that's influencing the outcome. So, why not? Why not? One of my clients just recently, we picked mantras in my coaching program. They choose mantras, and she picked "Por qué no?" The Spanish version of "Why not?
Why not?
Por qué no? Why? Por qué no?" Would we set ourselves up for success instead of discounting yourself before you even get there?
I love that. I'm going to interrupt this podcast for just one quick second because a lot of people wonder, Mickey, what is it that you even do besides host a podcast? Well, I do marketing, and really the biggest thing that I do is help you drive more traffic to your business. And not even just more traffic, but consistent traffic to your business. As a former shop owner, I know how important that is. So if that's something you're interested in, or you just want to talk about marketing or developing your business in general, feel free to reach out. You can visit collisioncentermarketing.com. There's a calendar on there, and you can just book a time that works for you, and we'll set up a phone call. Or you can email or call me, and my notes are down in the description of this episode. But I hope to hear from you. I'd love to help you build your business. But in the meantime, you better get back to this podcast because it's really good. So kind of talking about the people in general and dealing with our customers when they're coming into shops, or we're even dealing with colleagues, whatever. I would imagine that you have a strong sense of different interaction styles, male versus female, just, again, in general. Because I think that could be really great if we could dive into that a little bit, because we often think that other people think like we do. Like, well, I communicate this way, so they should. Well, when do you learn better that that's not true? Marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Have you ever sat at a dinner with your spouse and you come back and you've got completely different recall of the situation?
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And that's awareness, right? That you can look at that as right or wrong or good or bad, but the reality is that the truth is what you're telling yourself. Your truth is the story that you're telling yourself, and all of our stories are going to be different because we all have different life stories.
Right.
I remember with PPG, we had the Certified First program, which was to help collision centers amplify their marketing efforts and raise their customer service. And we used the Merrill Reed model in that, which is an assessment that identifies 4 different interaction styles.
Okay.
Each of us almost always has at least a sliver of all 4 of them. Occasionally, I think twice I've seen 2 examples of this where somebody had 0% of one of them, but usually there's at least a little bit. So there's 4. They're driver, analytical, amiable, and expressive. And you can do the assessment. Actually, Nikki, we could put that in the show notes here, because I can send you this, and you can see, because my prediction, for example, is that, Mickey, you've got a really unique, powerful driver expressive mix. Meaning you get stuff done, you're organized. Like if you've got a deadline, you're going to meet it. Simultaneously, you communicate, you're friendly, you're outgoing, you're gregarious. Sometimes drivers don't have that complement of the expressive. And so they can come across as very driven and unfriendly and almost myopic in their thinking and don't really care about the human side of things. So now, as a collision center owner, or as someone who's interacting a lot with customers, it's helpful to know both what your dominant style is and to realize some indicators of what others are.
Yeah.
So that you can communicate with an analytical, for example, sharing a lot of numbers and details.
Right.
With an amiable, you better ask about the family or, hey, how are you doing today? Or, what was the highlight of your week? Because that's how that person connects. That's how you build know, like, and trust factor with someone by, adjusting your style, adjusting your language to meet somebody else where they are. And it's super powerful. And what I especially love about that tool is its simplicity. I think there's value in all the assessments, Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinder, et cetera. But sometimes I think where the value diminishes a little bit is that there's so many categories and choices that you don't have it memorized. And like, you might know your own, but like, good luck identifying other ones, especially when you need it. But that is really, driver, analytical, expressive, and amiable. I mean, the four simple ones, and it doesn't take long to commit to memory and to know some tips and tricks to be able to connect better with someone who's not like you. Because like you said, we assume that everybody thinks like us.
Right. They don't.
They don't.
Well, and it's great too for writers, CSRs in a body shop. The second you see that person walking up, if you're able to identify just some cues, behavioral cues, or even when they speak a little bit, to identify them, to be able to speak their language, what really hits home with them can be really powerful.
Absolutely. I want to say maybe 8 months ago, an incident. And so went to get my car fixed, which is a fun experience for me because I know more than the average bear. So I think I surprise them sometimes with my with my question. Hopefully in a delightful way, not an irritating way. But I remember the day that I went for the estimate, and just the way things turned out. I had my dog with me, and I wasn't about to leave her in the car. And so I brought her in, and I said, "Hey, she's well behaved, she's on leash." I said, "Is it okay if I have her in here?" And they, for a second, they weren't so sure. She's not a vicious guard dog. But then they're like, yeah, that's cool. Well, the next time I went, they had a little, like the little thing you put on the leash with the bags to, clean up after your dog.
Yes.
With the Collision Center logo on it. And
wow.
I was so touched by that. So, call it interaction style, or just call it the ability to pause and, pump the brakes for a second and just understand where the other person's coming from and how delightful that is to me. Now, I do have some expressive and some driver. If I were pure analytical or pure driver, that probably wouldn't have landed so well with me.
Right.
But let's say maybe they've taken the Merrill Reed interaction style and they know, and they're like, here comes our expressive that likes her fur baby.
Yes.
Here you go, Jamie. And I'm like, sweet, I'm a customer for life.
Right. Exactly. Well, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying before about being curious with, we can be curious in a lot of different ways of, sitting in a meeting and being curious about what's going on and offering different opinion, but also being curious as, we're helping the public, we're helping our community. So how can we be curious about those people? And then also other people in the office. Sometimes we just kind of take them for what they are. But I think that curiosity component just makes that relationship so much deeper rather than just, we're here to work together and just deal with it. And I don't like you, or I don't really care for them. Well, do you even really know them? Have you been curious about them? I think it's that word curious, I think, is just very powerful, actually.
It really is. And it truly is a superpower, because sometimes curiosity can be vulnerable. And that's something that can be very scary territory.
Yeah.
But ownership of curiosity is different than a lack of knowledge, which I think is sometimes what prevents people from asking some of the curious questions of, well, I don't want them to think that I don't know.
Very good point.
But when you lean into it from the standpoint of, you know what, I would like to unpack this a little more, to use a kind of a kitschy term.
Yeah.
Or I would like to understand a little bit better of, about what makes you tick. I mean, walk me through your thinking process. And then here's the key: listening to it from an objective space, not from a judgmental space, because that's where it can backfire. If you say, walk me through your thinking process, and then you're instantly saying like, oh, that wouldn't work.
Yeah, so I can pick it apart. Yeah.
It's shutting that person down, and it's negative reinforcement. And so, they're not going to share that with you again, but the likelihood that they have some nuggets or some valuable information or ways of doing things is pretty high. If you just welcome, again, the objective side of it, to be able to listen and investigate, not listen and judge.
Right. Yeah. Very powerful. And one thing we had been emailing earlier today a little bit, and I saw in your signature, there was a video. So I clicked on it and it took me to ABC News, I think probably in your area. And they did actually a little story on Jamie, and it was really cool of all the amazing things that Jamie's doing. And I'll put some of it in the notes if you guys want to check her out. But there was actually one of the, I don't know if you call them clients of yours, and she was on there and she spoke about something that I thought was really powerful, which was direct language versus indirect language. So can you share with us the power one way versus the other of that, what that looks like?
Oh yeah. It's a fun one. I love it. And you did your homework very well, Mickey. I commend your efforts.
Thank you.
So Nora is the client that you're referring to. And Nora is in her mid-20s and, out in the business world. And sometimes, the complaint that I'll hear is, well, my voice never gets heard. And so I'll say, all right, well, share time that it didn't get heard. And the example I'll hear is, well, I was in a meeting and I suggested, I think maybe we should do this, whatever this was. And then I'll ask the client to say it again. And usually the second time she says it, her voice will gain assertiveness. Yeah. Which is interesting.
Yes.
And then I'll say, what if you eliminated a couple of the words in that sentence? How would that sound instead? I think maybe we should. And the initial aha is, well, I should not say I think, because if I'm saying it, clearly I think it. So it's redundant.
Right.
Maybe we should do this. And I'm like, okay, we're getting closer, but now let's take that. Let's remove another layer, shall we? And basically what we get down to is, we should do this is something that, I don't care what gender you are. I don't care how high or low your voice is. Do this is going to be heard louder than, I think maybe we should do this.
Right.
It's less words. It's more direct. And I can almost guarantee that the assertiveness in your voice will follow when you're using that direct language. And back to what we were talking about before with preparation, these are some of the go-to phrases that you can bring to a meeting. And if that feels maybe too aggressive, you could always say, I recommend we, instead of the directive of do this, because maybe you're not in the position to say it quite like that.
Right.
But, I recommend we. You're going to be heard a lot more effectively than, I think maybe we should. But nobody's paying attention. I think maybe we should. I mean, everybody's brains have a very short attention span.
Yes.
It's technology and where we are, it's not lengthening by any means, unless we're very intentional about that. So to do yourself and the others in the room a favor, speaking with that direct language is very helpful, and also eliminating the fillers. And that takes practice.
Yeah. And it also provides that confidence Because in order to say it that way, like we were going back to, which I think was a huge differentiator from me coming to the industry and having the experience I did versus hearing some other ladies and their experience, is I knew I didn't know it all and I was totally okay with that. But I had the confidence that I'd get it, I'd figure it out, and it was just a work in progress and I was okay. So I was able to have the quiet confidence and being able to speak directly, like you're saying, the confidence that you have, one versus the other, is so different. And so it's going to be received very differently.
Exactly. And what you just described, right, is the familiarizing. Like you were familiarizing the unfamiliar.
Right.
And that allowed you to show up and communicate in the way that projected confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing I wanted to bring up, and I can see it on your back shelf, is your book, Speak Up, Sister, which is so cool to have written something like that. For the ladies that are listening, is this something that you would, obviously, I'm sure you would recommend it, but I guess the question would be, what would be the benefit in a female in our industry specifically, since we're in the collision industry and you came from the collision industry? Why would you recommend that they pick up your book? I haven't had a chance to get it yet, and I'm excited to check it out.
Well, we can make that happen, Mickey.
Okay, good.
I know people.
Yes.
So my mission in business and in life is to empower women to ditch doubts, to speak up, and to achieve the careers they deserve and desire. Confidence is something that everyone is born with. There is a confidence gene. It is epigenetics, not genetics, which means that it's more like blood pressure and weight as opposed to eye color and height, meaning that with behavior and environment, you can change it.
Yeah.
You can grow it. So what this book does is in part one of the book, it's teaching you about how to build that foundational confidence, how to recognize and own your strengths, how to find them, how to pick out the things that come easily to you, which are likely your superpowers, but maybe you've dismissed them because you just assume that since it's easy to you, it is to everybody else.
Right.
It might not be, sisters. So this is a great way to highlight that, to find it out, and then what to do with it, to really own it. And mind you, all of this is about confidence and not about cockiness or arrogance. That's something altogether different.
Yes.
So part one of the book is about growing that foundational confidence that anybody can do. Just a little bit of intention and some knowledge and you've got it.
Yeah.
And then part two of the book, it's standalone chapters.
Okay.
Now you've got this foundation of confidence. Here's some circumstances that you might encounter, how to disagree without being disagreeable, how to manage conflict, how to stand up and speak up for yourself when you have been spoken over or passed over for a promotion or there's an opportunity. It's now these are circumstances that you're in. And I hear this a lot from ladies. Gosh, I wish I would have had this last week because that exact same thing happened.
Yeah.
But now they know how to do it differently next time. So I will tell you, I loathe wasting time. And this book is very much about not just reading and like, oh, that was a nice idea. Or I've heard people say, oh, I lived out loud a few times, Jamie, which that makes me really happy.
Yes.
But those are all great. But the better part of it is that at the end of each chapter, it says, all right, here's your competence challenge checklist. And Mickey, I have a feeling that you might be like me, that you love checking things off a list. And if you've done something that you go to check it off your list and you realize it wasn't there in the first place, you write it in or you type it in just so you can cross it off.
To do it.
Yeah. So this is, if that resonates with you, this book was written with you in mind.
Perfect.
So it gives you, here are specific actions that you can do to flex your confidence muscle. Because it is a muscle. You condition it the exact same way that you would if, you want to have ripped biceps in a few months. Well, that's going to involve some time at the gym, right?
Yeah.
But it's fun and it's rewarding because when you start doing reps, you quickly gather that strength and you get more excited to step out of your comfort zone and do some of those things.
So this could be something I feel like even for the men listening could be great for their daughters. Like I feel like my daughters are 16 turning 17 next month. But I would love, it being what I feel like as a powerful woman, there's a lot of things that I try to speak into my children, but oftentimes as a parent, our children receive things in a much different way than when someone else says the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Also true in marriage, but
third-party verification.
There you go. Yep.
But
I feel like this could be great for women, really, or ladies of all ages, because these are the types of things that specifically for women that we deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, these aren't bad or good. It's just these are circumstances. How can we make them the best that they can be? And as a person who's very positive, like yourself, I love that. I love that. And taking on the challenge of, okay, so it's going to be a little bit tough. That doesn't mean I should shrink back and withdraw. It's more the time to embrace it and lean in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm a fan. I love it all.
Well, and it's funny that you say that about daughters because, said collision center that I went to about 8 months ago, he bought one for his daughter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Daughters, employees, because, you want your employees to speak up when they've got ideas in their heads. You want them to be able to share that. I mean, not every idea is going to be the grand slam, but the more you can avoid the fear, if you avoid the fear of striking out, like that's when you get to hit a home run.
Right. That's the truth. I love that.
They work hand in hand. So yeah, I mean, and in my coaching cohorts, I mean, I think the biggest age range difference I had was 26 to 52 years old.
Oh, wow.
And it was pretty fascinating that even with that, it like double, right? Someone who was double the age of the other one, they were both saying, wow, yeah, I did encounter that, but here's how I overcame it. And, of course, the 52-year-old was, man, I wish I had known this sooner. And the 26-year-old was like, this is awesome. I get to learn this now. So, yeah, I mean, it really, it's written with women in mind, but, I highly encourage anybody to pick it up, and you can message me and tell me what you think.
Oh, I will. I'm excited. So we'll wrap up for today, but I'm going to put all of Jamie's links in the notes. I love the personality quiz thing. If you can send that over to me, I'd love to be able to attach that. If you have it on your website, I can link the page, whatever. I think that could be so useful for literally everybody listening or watching right now. It can be really powerful. And I just feel like there's, as one of the few females in the industry that you and I have been, and to have had success and such great stories and such a great experience, that I think just seeing you, everything that you've done for yourself and really being an empowered person as females coming up in this industry, I think they need to see people like yourself who wasn't afraid, who didn't shrink back, that it's okay to be different and to embrace that difference. And oftentimes they shy away because they're different. It's like, no, that's what makes you so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. The power of the network. I mean, my success did not happen on an island.
Right.
And that was also that's something, and that's a chapter in the book, building your MAC team. And MAC is an acronym for Mentors, Allies, and Champions. They were a huge part of leading me to where I am now. And it wasn't that I wasn't afraid. I mean, I was definitely terrified in some situations, but I was able to channel the confidence to be afraid and do it anyhow.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really the key. Yeah. It's so beautiful. Yeah. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for coming on. We could probably talk all day. I have to stop myself. It'll be 3 hours in and people are like, Mickey, can you wrap it up already?
It's your superpower though. And the works. And it's an honor to be a part of it and to have this conversation with you, Mickey. I really appreciate the course that you have charted as well. And it's an honor to connect with another empowered woman.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for listening. All the information is in the show notes below. If you want to contact Jamie, if you want to do some coaching with her, we'll have a link to her website. Pick up her book. That link will be in there too. And I guess we'll say goodbye for today and we'll see you next time. Bye, Jamie.
Speak up, sisters. Bye, Mickey.
That's right. Speak up, sisters.
If you enjoyed today's show, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We have some incredible topics and guests coming your way you will not want to miss. If you are watching on YouTube and don't want to miss the latest and greatest, you'll want to hit the bell after subscribing, so you will get a pop-up each time a video podcast goes live. To our devoted fans, would you mind paying it forward and sharing this little gem with someone else you think may benefit from it? Much love from all of us here at Body Bangin', all things auto body.